we have repeatedly emphasized that the potential of the Ferrari SF-24 single-seater exceeds its current performance. This refers to the first ground effect car from the Maranello team, which, starting from a blank slate, has effectively embraced more efficient concepts related to the current regulatory framework. The 2024 Formula One campaign's primary objective remains the same: to apply as much pressure as possible to the formidable Red Bull World Champion side. This is a team that has fully grasped the fundamental dynamics of the regulations governing the balance of wing cars since 2022. The Prancing Horse secured a splendid race victory at the Albert Park circuit in Australia. It did so by capitalizing on the only technical failure of Max Verstappen, who was forced to retire on lap 4 due to a problem with the braking system at the rear of his car. For the rest, the two Italian cars pursued, sometimes better, sometimes worse. There were generally good performances, but still fluctuating concerning tire issues. Problems were encountered in activating the compounds in various competitive scenarios: single lap outlap in the qualifying session, race pace with a high load of fuel on board. These are two different dynamics, yet they stem from the same endemic characteristic of the red car. The Italian single-seater inherently imparts a not very high amount of energy onto the tires. While this trait helps manage degradation, it does not allow the tires to light up correctly, maintain them within the appropriate working range, limiting the grip, which is insufficient. So much so that the performance suffers, and the time results are lower than those theoretically achievable. The result? It's not possible to push as hard as needed. Scuderia Ferrari has been hard at work, yet again, ahead of the Miami Grand Prix, with particular attention. Measures have been taken to manage the transition between soft and hard tires, the main issue encountered in this early phase of the 2024 Formula One Championship. A technical study at the suspension level to deliberate new suspension setup. Minor corrections from which benefits can be derived concerning tires without however disrupting the balance related to the aerodynamic platform. This is supported by investigative simulation related to the mathematical model of the Pirelli compounds, useful for hitting the track in the first free practice session, the only session of the weekend, with a couple of new warm-up strategies to inject the correct amount of energy into the tire. As mentioned, the sprint race format, for the second time in the championship, makes its return. It's an excellent opportunity to show that the lessons learned in the Chinese Grand Prix are bearing fruit. We refer to the fact that the FIA, very kindly after years of pressure, has decided to grant a double parc ferme, a very productive dynamic if used properly. McLaren sets an example, as we saw at the Shanghai International Circuit, where minor tweaks to Lando Norris's MCL-38 car number 4 allowed the British driver to change his competitive fortunes for the Sunday race. This after an initial 100-kilometer mini-race where things did not go as planned. Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur discusses this topic in his preliminary assessment for the press approaching the Miami Grand Prix. The French manager recalls the headaches suffered, but notes, examining the American layout, a significant difference from the Chinese one. A track that provides useful feedback, unlike China, where general information was lacking in this respect. The ever-smiling Frédéric Vasseur carries with him a certainty: the ability of the Ferrari SF-24 to perform much better than what was seen 2 weeks ago. This, considering that beyond the favored Red Bull, the competitors, primarily McLaren and then Mercedes, both with various updates, are ready to give battle. And we should not forget about Aston Martin. The importance of fully utilizing the only hour available in the first free practice session reigns supreme. To optimize the setup of the Italian cars, verifying the aforementioned work on the Pirelli tires, to optimize the 2 qualifying sessions, to be able to gain key grid positions that may favor strategy and performance in the 400 kilometers and more, that will be covered with a lot of fuel on board on Sunday. In the end, the decision was made to maximize the potential of the current Ferrari SF-24 car based on positive simulation results in preparation for Miami. The Maranello team is therefore not sending the new floor updates to America, believing they can regain the lead over McLaren even though the papaya-colored cars will introduce a first step of updates. The strength of steady nerves. Paraphrasing a famous advertising slogan, we can say that Ferrari has decided to appear in Miami with the usual aerodynamic configuration, without introducing some changes to the floor that could have brought forward the substantial update package planned for the Made in Italy and Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, which will kick off the European season on May 19th. Several Italian news media outlets initially reported that Ferrari intends to introduce a floor update already from the race at the Miami International Autodrome in Florida. However, the hoped-for last-minute air shipment of materials was ultimately not scheduled, as Ferrari eventually preferred to tackle the American weekend with the sprint race format and just one free practice session with the best red car decided upon at home back in Maranello. The data emerging from simulator work suggests that the SF-24 single-seater should perform better in Miami than what we saw in the Chinese Grand Prix, leading Ferrari's technicians to immediately extract the maximum potential from a car whose reactions they are familiar with, avoiding the introduction of new elements until the first round in Italy. This indicates that Vasseur's staff is confident in reclaiming the role of the second strongest team in the 2024 Formula One Championship, getting ahead of McLaren, which achieved a brilliant second place with Lando Norris at the 5.451-kilometer Shanghai International Circuit in China, ahead of Sergio Perez's Red Bull. At Maranello, therefore, there is a belief in outperforming the orange car, even though Andrea Stella, team principal at Woking, has greenlit the debut of some improvements on the MCL 38, getting a jump on the development battle. It will therefore be interesting to assess the performance of McLaren over the race weekend in Miami. A one-stop strategy is generally reckoned to be the quickest here, with most of the grid probably starting on the medium tire before switching to the hard from lap 15 onwards. However, in the case of a safety car, or if degradation turns out to be higher than expected, then some drivers might switch to a two-stop, going back to medium tires around laps 37 to 43. The forecast is for very hot and humid conditions, and the occasional rain shower cannot be ruled out, which would further complicate the situation. Lastly, a thought goes to history and the present. Let us also remember that at the anticipated United States event, the red car will be a bit more blue, with a historical nod to the colors of NART, North American Racing Team, and the suits of Niki Lauda and Clay Regazzoni. On one hand, the connection with America that Ferrari will celebrate in various ways, including the special livery for the SF-24 in shades of blue. The Floridian city will play host to several Ferrari events, starting with the International Cavalcade, with many major Ferrari owners taking part at the wheel of their cars, having driven through some of the most scenic parts of Tennessee and Florida, prior to the main event, the Grand Prix itself on Sunday. But this is also a brilliant move to best welcome HP, the new title sponsor of Ferrari, which will make its debut in the Miami Grand Prix this weekend. The American IT multinational, which has blue and white as its brand colors, will find an immediate and very effective brand identity in front of its home crowd to mark its new partnership with the Italian company. With the arrival of its new title partner, the Ferrari SF-24 cars will feature a unique livery specifically for this event in the United States, which will be unveiled on Wednesday.